Call the meeting to order for the Historical Preservation Board. Regular meeting Monday, December 16th. We'll have a roll call first.
Chair Price.
Present.
You had to think about that?
I'd have to think about that. What word should I use?
Vice Chair Field.
Present.
Board Member Fisher.
Here.
Board Member Gabriel.
Here.
Board Member Hill.
Here.
Board Member Hood.
Here.
Board Member Spratlin.
Here. Shall we do the Pledge of Allegiance? Our next item. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and I would like to propose a change to the order in which the agenda is prosecuted tonight. I would like to do the public hearing before we do general business, if nobody has any objection to that. Okay, then we shall do that. Then we shall move on to public comment. Anybody?
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes,
Minutes to be approved.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Minutes to be approved. Shall we certify the November 18th regular meeting minutes? Thank you, Colleen.
These are the revised minutes that are in the packet that we have in front of us.
Correct. These are the correct minutes, not the ones that originally went out.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
We have a motion. Andy, 1 minute.
I move to approve the minutes for the November 18th, 2019 regular meeting of the Littleton Historical Preservation Board.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? We vote on this one? Use your voting mechanisms. Everybody voted?
Did you turn us on?
And that looks like it carries. All right, now we'll move to public comment. You have anybody who would like to address the board? Please come forward and state your name and where you live.
Good evening. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So tonight I'm here to talk about the Littleton Boulevard mid-century modern historical potential district. And my concern is that, and I didn't have a chance to look up the dates, but you know, the presentations were over a year ago about that, and I don't see any action. And in the meantime, the city passed a future land use map that I think impedes the ability of all of us to protect that district. So I want to see action on that. And I appreciate that there's a lot of other things to do and demands on staff time and et cetera. But again, I'm afraid that our ability to protect this area has been degraded by what already has happened. And unless there's progress in making the protections, I'm afraid we'll lose it. And that may not be in the next 5 years, but it could well be in the next 15 or 20. The reason I say that is because the design, for one thing, we know that the buildings, the structures that have historic merit are not contiguous or adjacent to each other. So it has to be an overlay district. And to protect them and the nature of what they are, there really need to be setbacks and space around them, because that's the character of mid-century design. Yet the plan and the kind of design concepts in the comprehensive plan in the future land use map are not consistent with that protection at all. So I'm worried about your ability, our ability to pass meaningful design guidelines and standards that protect those structures effectively in the long run and in the way they deserve to be. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight. I am pleading because, you know, Colorado Preservation pointed this out in 2014, I believe. 5 years ago? And we did get the survey done, but 5 years is a long time, and where is our action, especially considering the comp plan and the future land use map? I really want to see the Broadway to Santa Fe protection. That's going to be a jewel in the future to the city. It will be unmatched in the Denver metro area. It will be an asset economically and for quality of life. Please, Historic Preservation Board, move the plans forward to protect Littleton Boulevard Mid-Century Modern. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, then we shall move on to our public hearing, the HPB Resolution 07-201, 2019, approving a certificate of historic appropriateness for the Quinney residence located at 5736 South Bemis Street. Have a plan for us, Andrea?
Thank you and good evening. I'm Andrea Mimnaugh of the planning staff. I have been the project manager for the Certificate of Historic Appropriateness application and will be presenting it to you this evening. And also with us is the applicant who is prepared to make a presentation following my presentation. So the application is for window replacement, and this is at the Quinney residence at 5736 South Bemis Street. The applicant is requesting approval that will allow the placement windows on the Littleton Historic Landmark. The application or the presentation will include some information about the application itself, the process, and then we'll move into review criteria, and then there will be a staff recommendation and options for HPB taking action this evening. The process has been that this application began with a pre-application meeting that was with staff, and then once the application was submitted, there was a review at the staff, and tonight the board is taking a look at the application and will make the decision on the case. Again, the subject property is at 5736 South Bemis Street. And you can see from the slide here, it is a single-family house, and it's a Littleton historic landmark. There are two street views, and then there's also an overhead view that gives a idea of where in the neighborhood it sits. This is Bemis Street, and it's south of Littleton Boulevard. And it's the property that is shown in yellow. The Quinney House is a late Victorian style house, and it was built in 1908, so over 100 years old. You can see here from the photographs that there are a number of windows that are proposed to be replaced. Numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5, shown in red, are windows that are older. They may be the original historic windows, or they may not be. We cannot tell. In any case, they're double-hung windows, and they are older. The remaining windows, numbers 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, are non-historic windows. And what the applicant proposes to do is to change all of them into more of a consistent style, and one that replicates the simple double-hung window style that is presently on the north side of the house, where you see the numbers, the windows identified with the red numbers. There are no historic preservation standards or guidelines for the Quinney House, and the Quinney House is not in a historic district, and so the application is subject to the Certificate of Historic Appropriateness criteria that's in the Historical Preservation Code. So moving on to the analysis, the Historical Preservation Code for an individual historic landmark include both standards and considerations. Considerations are not necessarily standards. They are items that the board may consider when making a decision on the application. And so some of the considerations that I've pulled out, I think that are the most important, pertinent to this application. And the first is that it's unknown if the older windows are original to the house. The next one is that the proposed fiberglass windows will not detract from the historic character of the house, in that they will be the same style, single or the double pane windows. And you can see in the bottom of the slide here, on the left, there is a photograph of the window as it exists, and on the right would be the replacement window. Now, the replacement window in this depiction has different dimensions, but the windows that would actually replace would be the same dimension. So in other words, the opening would not change. The existing windows are not in working condition, and the replacement windows would be located on the side of the house, so not as visible from the street as would be the front-facing windows. And onto the Certificate of Historic Appropriateness standards. The standards require the preservation of distinctive features. And the windows are certainly important features of any house, and that is a standard within the field of historic preservation. But I think there is a question of whether or not the double-hung windows are actually distinctive features. And so that's something that I think that needs to be taken into consideration as a standard, preserve distinctive features. And deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. And as detailed in the staff report, the applicant did in fact contact a company that restores windows and received a price from them that was really quite high, and did have an intention of potentially just saving what it was that they had. But due to the price, they are preferring to have these windows actually replaced. And finally then, the historic character of a property shall be preserved. And it's staff's opinion that the historic character will in fact be preserved in that the replacement windows are on the sides of the building. The replacement windows are simple and easily replicable in their design. We are not talking about leaded glass, fanciful windows in this particular application. Again, it's a simpler window that can be easily replicated. Just a few more photographs there. And then staff recommends approval, finding that the standards for a certificate of appropriateness have been met. And I'm available for any action or any questions that you may have. The HPB has several options, and you may approve with conditions, deny the certificate of historic appropriateness, or continue to the public hearing date to a date certain.
Thank you, Andrea. Questions for Andrea? I have a couple, Andrea. First of all, will there be a change in the exterior trim, or will these windows basically fit into the existing openings and not require any alterations?
Yes, the windows will fit right in. Custom windows that will go into the existing opening.
Okay. And do we have a fund in the city to help with window preservation for projects like this? I know we do with the Main Street Historic District, and we've done that on Curtis Street last year, but are there funds available for homeowners like this?
Now, the Main Street Historic District Grant Program only extends to properties within the downtown, either within the district or commercial properties that are individually designated.
Okay.
The property on Curtis Street was in fact an individually designated landmark that is used for commercial use. And so there is no fund for historic buildings outside of downtown. What there is available, however, is the Historic Preservation Tax Credit. And this is an application that would be reviewed by staff and then reviewed by the board following that, making a decision. And the applicant may receive 20% credit on qualified work that is done. And replacement windows can potentially be considered a qualified cost.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Would you clarify that? Replacement windows would be covered or refurbishing the existing windows?
Replacement windows can also be considered a qualifying cost. If you think about it, not all windows can be refurbished. In this case, the windows can be refurbished, but because they are not distinctive and is the applicant's desire to replace them and to create a solidified look on both sides of the house, that could be something that can be considered for historic tax credit, but would be further evaluated if an application is submitted.
And I also believe I saw in here that they will be painted. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. It'll be fiberglass windows, and they will be painted to match.
Question, so currently, the windows don't match, is that correct? So on one side, the majority of the windows may or may not be original. On the other side, we know they're not original, but presumably they don't match currently, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And you'll see in the plan set, over on the south side of the house, the south elevation, there are windows that do have mullions in them.
Okay.
Late Victorian style typically did not include windows of that style. They did tend to be double-hung windows, and they are clearly not older windows, so appear to be more recent replacements, and they will be replaced with double-hung windows to match those that are proposed for the north.
So the whole house would be matching then?
Yes,
I mean,
now,
on the
and
sides,
then,
on the
in
side.
addition, there are two smaller windows, which would, and then there are the porch windows that would be slightly different as well, but we would be eliminating mullions that most likely did not exist with this building due to the style of the house.
I'm sorry, one more question. So the two windows at the front of the house are not involved in this project, is that correct?
That's correct. They were replaced prior to the house being designated as a historic landmark.
Okay, thank you.
Look, Lisa.
Andrea, do you have an idea of the age of the windows on the south side, the back porch ones that do have the mullions?
I do not, I can't really
Okay,
make a guess on that.
but before designation? at
Yes,
least?
absolutely, before designation.
Okay.
The designation was in, just recently.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Other questions?
One more question. On that back porch and those windows, was that original to the house, do you know? Is there any documentation of that, or is that something that was added on at a later date?
That is a good question for the applicant. I know that there is an addition on the house, and they will know the answer to that.
Perfect.
That's why we love to have the applicants come. They've got the history. Any other questions for Andrea before we have the applicants step forward? Come on up. You were moving just right. Please state your name and your address, please.
Paula Quinney, 5736 South Bemis Street, Littleton.
Welcome. Thank
Excuse
you.
me, Miss Quinney, can you speak into the
sorry.
microphone, please? Thank you.
Do you need it? Do you need my, okay, okay. So first, I want to thank you all for your consideration, and want you to know that I have always and will always do what is best for this old house to keep its charming character. So do you have questions for me? So there are 8 different windows in this 1,100 square foot house they're all different. So we want to make them uniform, and I did look at repairing the ones, but the cost just to do 3 of them was a lot. And it would also mean having to take now we totally restored the house. It was gutted and the inside was totally restored. And the outside, we did the best we could to make it to look the way it did before, or better. So the trim on the interior of those windows would all have to be torn off in order for them to restore the windows and put new windows in there. And that would be devastating in more than one way. So what questions do you have for me?
Or I think David has a question.
I think it's not necessarily, I think, critical for this evaluation, but more from our knowledge. Do you know, was that back porch area original to the house, or do you believe that that might have been added on at a later date?
No, the house, just the rectangular part in the front was the original part of the house. And then they added a bathroom, and originally, when we bought the house, there was a kitchen area in that back. And so, yeah, that was the back area, and no, it's not original.
Okay.
And then we put an additional, there was another, so there were 3 phases. The original house, the 1908, then that back area, which was the kitchen and bathroom, when we bought it. And then there was a little room behind that had to be torn down and redone.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other questions? I have a couple for you. On Windows 9 and 10, those are wide and not very high. Will those then be replaced with operable windows?
It would be nice.
Okay. That is
So
where the glider will go?
I'm looking for that. 9 and 10 are on the back of the house.
Okay.
Is that-
Andrea, can we pull that slide back up?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm working on that.
Well, thanks.
So all the windows that are on the north side are inoperable. We haven't been able to lift them. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then there's one in the bathroom. The one in the bathroom also is right next to the shower. So they're going to replace it with the tempered glass. Right now, it's not that, it's single pane, and it's not, I guess it's not to code.
Good idea. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
So those will be the glider sliding back and forth?
yes. Yeah, so that's the second edition. And those windows, when we purchased the house, they were not operable, but we needed to make that room a bedroom until we finished the addition. So basically, they just lift up. They are not, wind comes through them. It would really be nice to have. Actually, this is the first year that I have not covered them with quilts, all of the north windows and those windows, because we were hoping to have them replaced in November.
Well ventilated, what you're saying?
It is well ventilated.
Good. Okay, so those windows will not have mullions or muntins in them?
No.
Okay, those are just the tempered glass, where the bathroom is. And
The
and other-
bathroom's on the north side. That's the one that will be tempered glass.
Okay. And then the other windows, I see a diagram here, a window diagram that shows what we either call mullions or muntins. Are those, will those windows then have those, or will those just be flat pane?
There will be no mullions in any of the windows.
There won't be, okay.
So
it'll
it
just
will
be
look
a-
like the front windows that you see. Mm-hmm. They're all, and the north side, they're gonna look like that. There's gonna be no mullions.
Okay. Thank you. Kim?
I don't have any.
Anybody? Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We open the public hearing then. Colleen, gosh, I got something right. That's good. All right, well, we shall open the public hearing. And do we have anybody who wishes to speak to this proposal? Please step forward.
I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So as I did when the house was given landmark status, I just wanted to thank the Quinnies for voluntarily making this house historic and therefore opening themselves up to this process. I want them to replace their well-ventilated windows. That would be really good. And I'm thinking of the difference between this, just for comparisons, for the house on Berry and Prince, in which the siding was proposed to be replaced for a grant, and that was the front siding. And it did, and then the next estimate was to clad the house, and that would change the appearance of the house. I think these are different. And so therefore, this is appropriate for this change, whereas that was not. And so functionality is good. Again, I profoundly thank the Quinnies for doing this.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Well, hearing none, we shall close the public hearing. And would anybody like to make a motion regarding this COA? Are you looking for it?
Do we move to discuss or move to propose?
Pardon me?
Do we move to discuss it?
Well, we do a motion first, get a second, then we'll discuss.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Okay.
Where is it?
I think it's here.
Oh, gosh, where's the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Colleen? Down near the end here?
Yes.
You got it?
Yeah.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure.
Oh, thank you.
I move to approve HPB Resolution 072019, approving the Certificate of Historic Appropriateness for the Quinney residents.
Second?
I'll second.
Again, Kim, okay, now we can discuss. Comments? Andy?
I felt like the materials were very complete. They meet the standards. There's no significance to these windows. They're not facing the front. I mean, we've covered all the points, so I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm also comfortable with it, given that there have already been changes to the windows. Some of them we know are not original, others may or may not be. I don't have any issues. I'm fine with approving this.
Okay. Kim?
Well, I also appreciate your efforts to maintain this home. And I'm very happy with this, and I'm happy that the interior trim will be preserved. I know that's special to you.
Yeah. Lisa?
I want to echo that. I think that I walk by this house all the time and think it's so charming, and that you guys have kept it up really well. I have no issues at all with the double hung replacements. I question a little bit the 8 through 11, just the fact that they wouldn't match the style or have mullions the way that they did. It's very difficult to tell from the pictures the age of these windows, but the style to me of 9 and 10 especially seem to be somewhat like fairly historic. But I can't really tell for 8 and 11, but I don't believe that we have specific guidelines that would dictate needing to match the mullions exactly. That was just the only kind of question I had in my mind, was whether those should, even though they are at the back of the house, they do reflect some of the historic character of the house's lifespan. So I would like to see it with closer style mullions with the 5 different panes, or 6 panes, but I'm okay with it.
Okay. Thank you. David?
I'll reiterate what we've heard already, but I think it does meet the standards. I think it was a great application, very thorough, a lot of photos, and it helped us understand it. And staff did a great job. Also explaining that the proposed windows are not street facing on a primary facade. They still maintain the same size, shape, and character. And I think with the material change, that's an acceptable change considering those attributes.
Laura?
It's all been said. I'm in total agreement.
Okay. Well, I too would like to echo the comments of my fellow board members and thank you for landmarking your home. I know it means extra steps when you need to make an alteration or would want to do that, but it's so important to our history and our heritage to preserve homes such as these, and we thank you for that. I don't think there are a lot of historic photos of the home, so it's really hard to judge what the windows looked like way back in the day. But since you kind of have an eclectic mix of them, I think making them much more uniform and more usable so that you can actually live there and be comfortable, I think is a wonderful idea. So thanks for that. Laura?
Back in the spring, Paula and I did search for historic photos for her home, and this is really all there is.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
nothing in the library or in the anything, so this is it.
Gotcha. All right, good, thank you. Any other comments, or shall we take a vote? So the motion is to approve COA 7-2019 for the window replacement at the Quinney House. All in favor? Go ahead and do your voting. Ready?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
It's close. Thank you very much.
Coming in.
Okay. Well, we shall move on then to general business. And in your packet, you will see a little yellow tab there, because we're doing a resolution, or looking at a resolution tonight for our Littleton Legacy Program, or Littleton Legacy List, as it may be called. And after discussion with Kim and Rick Cronenberger last Thursday, we decided to expand the objectives a little bit. And the reason for that is to give people who are doing surveys of these potential landmarks, homes, a little bit more criteria to work with, so that it makes it more usable for the surveyors, and then, of course, for staff and for anybody who's looking to do a landmark. So you'll see a couple of minor changes in there, which will be part of Exhibit A. We didn't change the resolution itself. So the resolution that we're looking at tonight is to basically approve this idea of the Littleton Legacy List. So with that, there's no public hearing with this, right, Colleen? So-
That is correct, Chair. And just in addition to what you said, so the board knows, even though you're just getting this amended Exhibit A to the resolution, if that is the list that you approve with the resolution, it will be placed online with the packet tomorrow in a revised packet, so it will be available to the public.
So what we did when we discussed this was to take a couple of the goals and put them up in an introduction. And so we made the introduction to develop the objective criteria for inclusion on the list of significant historic structures in Littleton and provide a resolution, which those were part of the goals before. But very important in this is nothing in this program shall be construed to impose any regulations or controls upon or to provide incentives or awards to structures of inclusion solely because they are included in the program. So we're really going after the voluntary aspect and create public awareness for this program. And then down below on the criteria for inclusion, we had 3, we now have 6, and we found that there were a couple of other ones that we had, when we talked about them in our study session, we felt maybe we should put those back in because of the significant historic remodel. One example is the Littleton Post Office. That could be considered still a historic building with the remodel. And then the other part was the innovation in construction materials or design, or exemplifying a historic event or associated with a notable person or a particular ethnic group. So we felt that those were objective enough to be reinserted. And I think this is just a springboard. Will not be the final work product, but it would be what we start with tonight. And being the perfect being the enemy of the good, we'll get something out in front, and then we can start working on it a little bit more as we move forward. Do we need a motion to approve, Colleen?
Yes, if you're going to adopt the resolution with either the original Exhibit A or the amended Exhibit A, you will need a motion and a second.
Okay. Go ahead.
Where is the motion?
Motion is.
Would be at the bottom of the communication, which is the page before your resolution.
We have two here, Kim.
is.
Just in front of the resolution. It says proposed motion, I move to approve.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, oh, that's a long one.
Oh, it's right here.
Oh, good. Oh, that's a short one.
Yeah, this is true.
Well, I'll move. I move to approve HPV Resolution 05-2019, establishing the Littleton Legacy List.
Second?
Before a second, Vice Chair, can we be clear if you're approving that with the original Attachment A or with the amended Attachment A? The amended Attachment A is the longer one.
Yes, the amended Attachment A.
A second?
Okay. Second? Thank you. Discussion?
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
On the second version, it mentions we propose a change in existing code in section 468 of the city code. I'm a little
Oh, down here,
confused
okay.
about that part. Can you explain that part? Maybe
That-
Andrea?
That part we put in because we would be changing the code. And so that, the change to the code would be taking those 15 objective criteria and making them into 6 or 8 or however many we just want to do.
And is that for historic designations, or is that for the Littleton Legacy List?
Yes, my understanding is, and perhaps the board can correct me, during that discussion, that the changing, it would be in addition to the code to add the Littleton Legacy List, and there was no proposal to change the designation criteria at this time. That will be a conversation that will happen during the rewrite of the Historic Preservation Code during the next 18 months.
Okay. So if it's not changing the historic designation, how come it's in this part? Am I just missing something?
Well, you have two versions in front of you. One does not include it, one does.
Yeah.
So perhaps the board can discuss what you'd like to do and clarify.
It's in the amended list.
What's your question again?
What is it, Lisa? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the second one, I mean, it talks about the change in existing codes, and it says properties receiving historic designation shall be at least 40 years old. Do we mean historic designations as a landmark or within a historic district, or do we mean designation as the Littleton Legacy List? Because the list of 6 criteria, I think, reflects the Littleton Legacy List, but the language there, it sounds like we're talking about the historic designation criteria for a landmark or a
Yes.
historic
Well, we
district.
did have 2 different authors for the 2 different exhibits that are before you tonight. So I think that you're referring to the amended
Yes.
version, and so perhaps Mike can speak to that.
Well, I think, Lisa, you're correct. I think it'll be for, not only for the properties on the list, but all properties that would be potentially historically designated.
Okay, so it is.
Does that answer your question?
It's expanding. It's not just about the Littleton Legacy
No.
program under here.
It would be adding to.
Okay, so this also reflects us wanting to change the historic designation criteria. The second
Eventually,
one.
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So does it need to be reworded?
I wish I had that in front of me now. That section
I mean, the original section?
of the city code.
Oh, with the 15 criteria?
Because, okay, I guess where I'm coming from is that the staff communication version reflects pretty much exactly what we talked about at the work session last time, the 3, and it doesn't talk about the historic designation criteria, but then this revised exhibit I guess it also has different goals, but then talks about criteria for inclusion of structures in the Littleton Legacy Program, then goes into historic designation criteria. So are we saying that the historic designation criteria would be the same as the Littleton Legacy list?
That's a good question.
I agree with your concern here. You know, I came prepared, ready to discuss the legacy list and program, but I wasn't prepared to discuss changes or amendments to the historic designation criteria.
Chair Price?
Yes.
If I could, we do have the option to approve the resolution with the amended Exhibit A minus the area that's causing some concern. And then we can come back at another time and revisit that. As Andrea said, over the next 18 months or so, there's going to be some revision to code, and that might be a more appropriate time to address that issue.
Okay. Is there an area you'd like to strike or modify, Lisa?
I think this paragraph that's under criteria for inclusion of structures in the Littleton Legacy Program is where my confusion is starting.
Is it
The
just that one
amended
sentence you're confused, or do you think we should get rid of more in that paragraph?
You know what I think?
Are you on the amended?
I don't even know sorry to not have it memorized. I don't know what section 468 is. Okay. So to be approving.
Strike that whole paragraph.
Yeah.
That was in my original work, and then I think maybe it got omitted.
This paragraph.
Okay.
It would be better to strike that.
Why don't we take
whole
that paragraph out? Because that was in the original
Pronounced.
set of notes that I typed up, and it got left there when I redid this
Okay.
today. So why don't we just say criteria for inclusion of the structures in Littleton Legacy Program, and then just delete that paragraph, and then just start with number 1?
Yeah.
That work for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that if I could offer what I think probably happened, that was just kind of a working note.
Yeah.
And as you revise and revise and revise, it just kind of gets left in there. And I
Yeah,
know
you're
when
right.
I look at a document, if I've seen it too many times, I can't see anything wrong with it.
Changes.
No
I got you.
typos or anything. And I think that those were basically notes that shouldn't have been carried.
Okay.
So
Although
we can
in
just-
there, we do include architectural, political, economic, social, cultural, environmental, and/or geographical, which we don't include down below.
Yeah, I think we want to include the
Yeah.
40 years, because if you go to the original staff communication, it had, and this is what we talked about at length, was
Okay.
we
Yeah.
start with the paragraph, and then we go into the numbered list.
Yeah, I think.
If we
that's-
just started with the word properties receiving historic designation, leave that in there, but take out the first 2 lines and part of the 3rd line.
Well, I think, but it needs to be reworded as properties for inclusion in the Littleton Legacy Program, because
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
I concur with that.
So
Okay.
instead of
I think
receiving
it's especially confusing if we start calling this historic
Gotcha.
designation.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's not-
Properties included in the, okay. And the LLL shall be at least 40 years old and possessed, then go on from there. Is that all right?
I think that, yeah, is
Okay.
accurate to what the.
Is that okay,
last one
David?
was.
That look good for you?
I agree with that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then
that,
it's just the actual criteria that have changed since
Gotcha.
the original version.
so basically this, everything with properties receiving historic designations, that is basically the exact wording that was in our original stuff that we were doing last month,
Yes.
as I
Yeah.
recall, yeah.
I think you're right.
I think that's good.
Okay, all right. So we'll amend that to keep that. So we will say properties included in the LLL shall be at least 40 years old and possess architectural, political, economic, social, cultural, environmental, and/or geographical importance and be identified as potential local landmarks as a potential local landmark through a survey, then by meeting one or more. So that sentence stays. Get rid of the first one. Okay, first 2. Okay.
Good catch.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Sorry to be so.
This is why it's nice to
Persnickety.
work as
I
a
mean,
team, you know?
That's not persnickety, that's a very good catch.
Yeah, that is good. That really straightens that out, too. Another area that I think we might want to take a look at, since we are amending this, under number 1 for the criteria, the structure is a unique or rare example. I'm not sure we need unique or rare in there. You know, a good example maybe of an architect who is recognized, Eugene Sternberg, for example. I mean, he has many buildings in Littleton, and if we were to say rare, I mean, we might only be able to pick out one building as opposed to, you know, the plethora that he has designed here. So we may want to come up with a different
Want to
modifier
replace it
there.
with like meaningful? Structure is a meaningful example?
Well, we're trying to
just
stay
remove
away
them?
from, meaningful then becomes somewhat subjective.
So just remove the adjective
So
altogether?
The structure is
No, the
just an
structure
example.
is
An example?
an example of an architect. So we're just taking out
Unique or rare.
yes, and we're changing the A to an and.
Other amendments? Andy?
I don't have an amendment. Oh, yeah, we have to wait, don't we?
Typo?
Nope, no amendments. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Comment when the time is right.
Okay. Now, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I don't quite understand the significant historic remodel and why that wouldn't just fall under some of the other ones. And I thought our intention was to keep this list short and sweet, and
I think what
It's
it's trying to say
expanded.
that if the structure's not original, it's okay. I mean, I think that, like you said, the post office you wouldn't have considered because it had a remodel. So I think that's important to have in there.
But that one, would that not qualify under number one? Just think it might overcomplicate.
Well, again, these are for future surveying purposes, so that might act as its own criteria that could allow that survey to go forward. So I know what you're saying. I like to keep things simple too, but I think it's important to have that in there.
Because I think that might be a question. Well, we can't look at this house because it's had a remodel, but if we have that listed in here, I think it would be okay then.
And the post office really is a good example of that, because it's that remodel and addition is pretty significant. And it really does change the original structure of the post office. And also, our original, or our intent in our last study session was to keep it very short. And as we looked at it with some more input, we realized that the audience is broader than just maybe a property owner. It is for contractors that might be brought in for survey purposes and for architects, builders, contractors that might need guidelines to work on the structure.
In my opinion, making it more complicated just convolutes it with historic designation, and I feel like if we're going to establish a clear message that this is not historic designation light, it's a completely separate planning tool. The fact that it reads almost exactly like designation criteria, even the designation criteria that we have, like the significant historic remodel, I think it's going to confuse people and could be less of a positive program as we were intending, I guess, if it becomes one and the same with designation.
Or you think it's just not user-friendly?
Yeah, the wording, we spent a long time wordsmithing to try to make it sound less like the designation criteria, but this we've kind of gone back to the same wording that's in the code now. But if I'm the only one with concerns about it, it's okay.
Well, again, this won't be the final product. We'll continue to work through this.
Okay.
And so I'm sure we'll have many more study sessions and work on a document which will be less confusing, so.
Okay.
Now, do we need to make a motion, Colleen, to amend the amended Exhibit A?
No, because Vice Chair Field, when she,
Made her motion.
yeah, we've included it as the amended list, and we can go in and make those amendments to the list, because it was never part of the packet to begin with.
Okay. So we can work on that up here without having to make a motion to amend
Correct,
our language.
correct. So we're going to have the one motion
Okay.
to approve the resolution with the amended Exhibit A,
Okay.
which is what we're doing right now.
What we're doing now, okay.
Right.
good.
And,
wanted to
and
make
just to
sure.
be clear, you don't all have to agree on everything in it. If the vote isn't 7-0, that's okay.
Okay, any other comments, or, Andy, you had a comment?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure if it was the appropriate time, but I did want to say that I appreciate the additional sentence added to the introductory paragraph. I felt like that was the missing piece that we wanted to communicate back to sort of Lisa's point of trying to convey what this is and what it isn't. So, yeah, I just wanted to
Good.
thank you for adding that.
Anybody else? We ready to vote? Let's do it. Are you ready to vote, Kim? Or not?
The chair has already called for the vote, so we need to vote on it.
It's right to your right there.
The vote is 6 in favor, with Board Member Hood voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll continue to work through this. This is a,
Yeah, I think that one thing, I think we do need to continue to work through it. And also, just if we could have fresh eyes on it, just to read through it and make sure that it's clean.
all right, sorry to surprise you with that.
No, it's
But
I know, I've seen it a couple times, and I can't proof it.
Okay, sometimes it's too close. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Let's go to comments and reports. Community development, Andrea?
Yes, I'd like to report that at the next meeting, HBB meeting in January, we will have a discussion on updates to the Main Street Historic District Grant Program for the year 2020. And there'll be some options for the board to consider about tweaking the program. And if any board member has some ideas for how you may like to see the program amended, modified, just please give me an email of what you'd like to see, and then I can include it in that staff report as something for consideration.
Will that be part of the council retreat then at the end of January? Go that far, or?
Well, in the past, the grant program has always just stayed between the HPB, and staff assists by making the changes to the program.
Okay,
Council's in charge of designating the money each year. HPB is generally in charge of how to divvy it out.
so what would you like to see from us in terms of recommendations and comments?
Well, I have some ideas of my own, which I'm going to propose, and one of them would be, for example, I think that maybe the board might want to consider the percentage that you're giving out to projects. 80% is a very large percentage, and I think that made a lot of sense in the beginning years of the Main Street Historic District, when properties needed a lot of work and the district was not necessarily as what shall I say, preserved as it is today. And I think that as I look through other programs around the state, 50%, 40% and even 25% is actually more common. Now, there may still be a role potentially, because we have an opt-in district for someone, if they opt in, perhaps they can get 80% on their first round. But I'll lay that all out in the report for the board to consider. I think that anything at all that you may have that you think that the board ought to reconsider, you can send it over to me and we can talk it through, and I'll write it up and include it. And I'll send out an email just to remind you.
Okay, great, thank you. How about our projects that are ongoing now, the ones that we funded last year?
Yes. Let's see. So the creamery is complete, and the applicant has been reimbursed. The J.D. Hill General Store, as you know, has suffered a tragedy, and that work has not been complete. And in fact, I am working with the property owner, Carl Pappert, and the state to see if there might be a possibility of obtaining an emergency grant to assist with some of the costs in restoring the building.
Does the board know what happened there? Everybody knows? Okay. Yeah, that was. Yeah, well, we can, for our TV audience, Andrea, would you talk a
Yes.
little bit more about what happened at that?
Yes, in November, early in November, the accident was that a car actually came off of Santa Fe and went right through the building itself and landed in the middle of the building and sat there. And the wheels continued to turn, and we were very, very, very close to having the entire building go up in flames. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and fortunately, there were no injuries. We were very, very lucky with that. But the right side, as you're facing the building, the right side of the building has a large hole in it, which is boarded up and does have a mural on it. And the applicant has obtained a contractor who seems to be very conscientious in keeping the character and preserving what was there. The state is very willing to help, and the applicants or the property owner's insurance agent is helping as well.
Oh, good. That's good. Anything else?
Yes, on another topic, the Littleton Boulevard survey. So the city sent out packets, I think, as you know, to the property owners, and that included an excerpt from the overall context report, and then also the long form of the property that pertained to the property owner, and a cover letter sort of explaining what the project was all about, and to call with any further information, and that properties may be eligible for landmark designation. And since that went out, those packets went out, I have received 4 calls, and all 4 people were very genuinely happy to have received the packet and the information. And all 4 property owners also did ask how it was going to impact them personally. For example, they wanted to know if their taxes were going to go up or if there would be some sort of property restrictions. And so I said that was not the intent of the survey. The intent was to see what the city has, and there are no plans at this point.
Well, that's great if they're opening up that dialogue, that maybe they're interested, so that's four
Yes,
responses.
I believe that we do have people on Littleton Boulevard that are interested in designating their property. I believe that, well, we may see some over the next year, some applications come through.
Wonderful, that's great. How about you, Mike, anything from your end?
No, Andrea covered everything. Just wanted to wish you happy holidays.
Well, thank you, same to you. Anything else, Andrea?
I think that's it.
That's a lot. That's great. Good work. How about, let's see, community development staff, board members? Any updates from board members? Kim, I know you've been working on a number of things.
Well, I have 2 questions, Andrea. One of them is the banners for Littleton Boulevard on the light poles.
Yes.
An update on that, please?
I'm sorry that I have no specific update, except that we're working with Excel to get approval to put the banners up.
And also on getting a training or a workshop with the state.
Yes. I will contact the state. I believe that the state does not necessarily have a training workshop on filling out surveys, but I believe that they are willing to put one together for the board. They were impressed that the board had an interest in this. And so I will work with them in putting something together. And I do understand the board is interested in potentially doing this on, for example, a Saturday morning, if I'm correct, if that seems amenable to people.
Yeah. That sounds great. Other board members? Any other comments, reports?
I just had
Andy.
a quick question. Thank you. Who else was planning to go to Colorado Preservation Inc.? Anyone else on the Kimberly?
Are you going?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
We have two.
Just curious.
That's good. All right, good. Let's see, from my side, I unfortunately missed HLI's annual party. My car broke down in Roswell, New Mexico on Tuesday on a turnaround to pick up my daughter, and the engine suffered catastrophic and fatal damage. So the car's still there. But I'm back. But I didn't get back for the party on Wednesday night, but I understand it was a very nice party. And HLI has a number of things that they need to be very proud of that they have accomplished in 2019, and it's going to be a big year for them in 2020. I think the first event is over at the Vita on January 8th. There will be a forum over there. I think Gail Keeley is going to speak, so that'll be. We'll get information out to everybody, but it's good to stay connected with the folks from Historic Littleton. As far as anything else, I think that's all I had. So. Appreciate everybody's good work and wish you all a very Merry Christmas and hope everything is good in the new year. Oh, I know one more thing. That is, I met with Reed Betzing this morning, our new city attorney, and talked a little bit about what our goals and objectives were with Ashley. And one of the things we talked about is that we're going to have a liaison from council. So, one of our concerns in the past has been being able to get in front of council and let them know what we're doing, and then hear back from council so that we know what they would like us to be doing. But we will have a designated person who will now be, who won't be at every meeting, not here tonight, but will be involved with us. And so that the council will then have a conduit to historic preservation. So I think that's a real positive for next year.
That's great.
And that person is one who's well known to you, Pam Grove. So, a friendly, so that's good. So that's all I had. Motion to adjourn? Don't need a motion? Oh, good, well, then let's just adjourn.
The command.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Happy holidays.
Yes, thanks to everyone.